Says we are live. What's good? Elite live streams. It's your boy Brandon B. What's good, y'all? I just wanted to hop on here real quick because I got a really great video that came across my timeline, and I thought it was something that I'll be really interested in talking about today for you guys. And I know it's a late night stream, and I just kind of wanted to hop on here a little bit later tonight and just do something a little different. This video is going to be something that I think, in my opinion, is going to be something that I can, kind of express a little bit about myself and my personal experiences in life and the things that I've been through. And I think it's important that, using this platform to be able to raise awareness, not only for, just ourselves, but also just the space where you have Black men who deal with a lot, every single day, living in America. And I always thought it was very interesting to see kind of if there was, conversations that happen. And of course, there are a lot of conversations, especially nowadays, that are happening kind of surrounded around Black men and the mental health and the toll that we all kind of deal with on a day-to-day basis. And I thought this video kind of really encapsulated that. So I wanted to hop on here and talk about this video that I came across, and just give you guys kind of a little perspective on, how I feel and the things that I see in my personal everyday life. And I think Dr. Tommy Curry does a great job of encapsulating that experience and really, really wrapping it up in such a great way that I thought it was really important for me to talk about. So what we're going to do is we're going to bring this up for you guys so that we can watch it together. And then I'm just going to kind of go back and forth with you guys over just kind of the key points that he's going to be making, and just, in general, kind of the conversation that these young brothers are having. And this is from the creator is I Never Knew TV. Salute to them for this great content and the conversation that they are getting started. So yeah, let's get into it.
Sexual contributed to the hypersexualization of Black men and challenges in building healthy relationships.
Oh, well, I mean that's our lecture itself. Well, let me say briefly. The first problem is the disregard, right? So when we look at the child physical and sexual abuse literature, we see that victims of abuse tend to either lash out, become abused themselves, or develop dependency relationships with other people who continue cycles of abuse. Okay. Within the Black community.
All right. So just off top, if you guys really caught that, he was basically saying that a lot of the natural response for young boys when they do go through very traumatic situations is to lash out and to, act out. And I think when you're growing up as a young Black boy, you don't really get those opportunities to kind of express your feelings because you're already under a construct of white supremacy. So what technically happens is, like, let's say you are having a bad day, right? Granted, most kids do have bad days. If you've ever babysat or had children, or if you are a parent, you understand that all kids have bad days. It just, there's sometimes no rhyme or reason to why they do. It just happens. And so you see that most Black boys don't get those opportunities to kind of express themselves or to lash out or to, go out of their, their normal ways of thinking or acting, because most times there's already much more of a harsher response towards young Black boys. So instead of him being looked at as, hey, what's going on, it's more so looked at, is he a problem child, and it's a very unfortunate situation because you see it all the time where there are kids who were just misguided youth, who just really needed someone to take the time to say that they'll be okay or that things will get better at some point. But it's very sad sometimes that we see more times often than not that young Black boys don't really get those opportunities to kind of, express themselves and how they feel and what they want and what they're afraid of, and so sometimes, most times, they're treated very harshly and given, very, very harsh penalties and extremely disregarded, as he, pointed out. So let's continue.
We have high levels of exposure to violence. not because of our culture or because we're black people, but because we're in environments and neighborhoods that are impoverished, that are violent, that are neglected, etc. So there are structural factors, right, living in a racist society that put black people in contact with violence.
All right. So he also makes sure to kind of encapsulate the environment, right, of where most black people come from a violent environment. He's not just saying just as a direct home, right, but more so the construct of what, you know, is around us and what we're seeing every day, and kind of what's being, you know, put into our communities, and how much we see kind of what we're exposed to, right? So for instance, if you are a young boy and you are, you know, coming from a broken home, and then as well you're going outside and you're also seeing kind of not the most savory things about society every single day, yes, that will make a huge impact on you, and will also kind of put you in a very, very negative space where you're not only just kind of dealing with your own feelings inside, but you're also forced into a state of survival mode. And I think a lot of black men are in a constant state of survival mode, and constantly thinking about themselves and the things that they have to protect themselves from, that are outside of just what they have to deal with in their personal lives. And unfortunately, you know, we see it play out every single day. And we sometimes try to, you know, overlook these things, or just not pay attention at all. But in reality, the goal is to have these young brothers be seen, because that's the problem. You know, a lot of them don't feel seen. A lot of them feel like what's happening to them is it's a solo venture and they have no control over it. So it's hard sometimes to see a way out when nothing looks like it's gonna work out, you know. So we'll continue.
Now, that being said, that violence that's in neighborhoods and in communities bleeds into the household, and these black boys are going to experience that. When you have a black boy that's physically abused, when you have a black boy that can no longer trust the sanctity and sacredness of the home or the parents, that creates distrust. It creates a kind of skepticism, if not pessimism, about the ways that the world is going to treat this.
And that's such a key, like he just stated, is the parental home role, and the fact that betrayal is a very deep betrayal for a lot of boys, because they just don't know how to process not having the support system that most people do have, which is your parents. That's your first support system that you'll ever have in life. And so going through that and understanding that, this person is betraying me, and that I'm not exactly in a safe place, like I said, it puts a young boy into a state of survival mode that isn't necessarily normal for any child to be dealing with, and especially one in our community. The black community is already a tough place, but then as well, to feel like you're alone and you don't have any support or anyone looking out for you is just a terrible thing to live and to go through. And so I'm so, glad that he's actually kind of like encapsulated this and making it something that we can kind of look at from that perspective, because it is very, very sad. And I think a lot of young boys deal with that betrayal every single day, where they're growing up in an environment that isn't necessarily the most savory environment, So let's see. He continues here.
Young man. And they internalize that. And when I say internalize, I don't mean they become bad people, but they take note of that, and it develops as part of their consciousness. We also see this as being related to suicide ideation and depression in young black men as well. So we find that these hostile environments where the young black boy doesn't feel safe, that he's always a victim of stress.
Can you elaborate more on that concept of battle fatigue?
Yes, and I think he made a great point here where he says they're in a constant state of stress. That couldn't be more true. I think sometimes, it's underestimated, I think, in the black community in general, just how important, or how prevalent stress is and constant it is, right? And how much we deal with it every single day, whether it be from our own personal things that we're going through and things that scare us, or if it could be maybe the outside world too, where we're going through so much that we have to deal with the microaggressions, and then as well kind of just the straight up racist BS that goes on every single day. Yeah, it leaves us in a constant state of stress and constantly on guard and afraid and very skeptical of everything and everyone. And it's not a great place for any child, let alone any person in general, to be living in that constant state of being scared or being, fearful of someone that we technically should be able to trust. And so, yeah, I think that's such a key component that he's pointing on right now, is because, yeah, it does create a level of like battle fatigue, that we're constantly on guard and constantly battling and fighting against something. And sometimes that can get a little tiring. Of course, yes, like we're built different, right? And we're made to be different. But no one, in my opinion, is able to fight forever. We have to figure out, ways to be able to conserve our energy for other things, more important things. And so he continues and he goes really, really deep about the battle fatigue thing here.
Because many brothers who
racial
know about it. It's nonstop stress, it's nonstop navigating, it's nonstop looking around and being strategic with stuff. So can you elaborate on that, please?
Yeah. This is, William A. Smith, a great friend of mine, colleague, developed the concept of racial battle fatigue to talk about the way that allostatic load and stress impacts the psychological and physiological aspects of Black men regulating themselves, right? That they're not on balance because they're constantly watching over their shoulder. They're on high alert, right? There's a constant worry about where the next threat or attack is coming.
And that is so true. Is I think in sometimes our own mind, right? We are constantly worried about what's going to happen, or what will be the next shoe to drop, and that will come to disrupt whatever we have going on. And I think that's been kind of something that I think Black people have dealt with for generations. It's just that constant state of wondering what's next, and what's going to be like, something that's gonna take us to kind of a place that we just don't want to be, and take away everything that we've worked for, right? And so I think a lot of men, a lot of Black men deal with that, because a lot of Black men are very productive and successful, and they have a lot to lose. And they understand that with that comes a lot of responsibility and a lot of weight on your shoulders, because you have to hold up that line and making sure that everybody's going to be okay, because you are the head of the family and you are the person who's going to be that breadwinner and taking care of everything. So the stress levels are maximum when you're in that provider role, where you're making sure that everything is good and you're the one taking care of everybody. And I think sometimes, we get really, really sidetracked, I think, in a way where everyone thinks that it's so easy to, be able to hold up these, responsibilities. But it's not easy when you're also a Black man on top of going against the grain, which is, white supremacy and the white construct that we live under, which is, the U.S. government. And so sometimes we underestimate how much that could affect us as we're like pushing forward to pursue our dreams and pursue our goals and to make things happen. We have to play by a certain level of rules that not everyone else has to play by. And I think sometimes that can just stress us out, because it's like, like for all the work and the hard, time and the push that I have to put in, sometimes it's not the same for those other people out there. And so I think the weight is what I think he's alluding to here, is the fact that, Black men as a whole have to deal with so much on a daily basis. And then on top of that, the weight of the world and the weight of the families, and then also just inherently wanting to just be safe and okay is like a big thing, you know. So he continues here.
And this leads to various, real comorbidities, right? High blood pressure, diabetes, lack of sleep, unrestfulness, anxiety, depression. And we have to kind of take note about the way the environment's actually impacting Black men physiologically and psychologically, how our minds are never at rest, how we're never feeling safe, how we don't have security.
This is facts, you know. On a personal level, you know what I'm saying? I deal with my own anxieties and stress every single day, you know. I've dealt with depression, you know, and I've dealt with very real suicidal thoughts. And I think in our lives, you know, sometimes we never really take into account, you know, because we're so like hyper fixated on one goal, right? And we want that goal so bad that we don't really necessarily take care of everything else. So sometimes, let's say, you know, you do have a goal, right? And maybe that goal doesn't really work out in your favor, right? And sometimes that can be really depressing, you know, where you feel like you've put in so much work, you've done so many things the right way, and something just doesn't work out in your favor. But that's just a part of life. And I think sometimes, you know, when we're living, you know, in our existence and, you know, we're so hyper fixated on what we want that sometimes we just, you know, forget about everything else. And I think being a Black man doesn't leave much room for us to address our feelings and what we're really going through every day. And we also sometimes don't take into account the work that needs to be done through, you know, getting therapy and speaking to someone and reaching out to someone to help you and to help you grow, so that you do have those tools, so that when those thoughts or those ideas or those feelings do come back, you'll be able to address them in a very significant way, and also be able to address them in a very real way. But the understanding is that, you know, as Black men, a lot of times, you know, what we're looking at or what we're going against is a systemic way or a systemic, you know, approach that we're fighting against. And sometimes it feels like the weight of the world is on us to be able to succeed. Just to be able to succeed, we have to do more than the normal, you know, person or the normal, you know, human being. So that gives us so much of a huge pressure on our own shoulders that, you know, makes us want to, you know, sometimes crash out. And unfortunately, you know, we've seen, you know, some legendary crash outs at this point. But I just hope that, you know, God continues to bless those who are, you know, going through those hard times, because I know what it feels like to be in those places and to be in those dark times. And I also know what it feels like to overcome those dark times and reach a level of peace within yourself, you know. And I think it's important that we all take the time to express ourselves and to seek the help that is necessary for us to grow and to become better people. But I understand what he means when it comes to the Black male experience. It's just it's a different level.
This becomes a major part of how we start thinking about Black men's mental health and their life chances. So what ends up happening is Black men experience this. Black boys experience this. They experience it in school. They experience it when they see cops. They experience it within home, right? And all of this is activated within a context of abuse, with a context of neglect, a context where people say that Black men and boys don't have real problems, that they're failures naturally. So what we're seeing, just like in the Howard situation with the New York Times, what we're seeing is not them being victims of institutional discrimination. What we're seeing is the manifestation of their inadequacy. Imagine how stressful something like that would be to a young man, that or someone who's trying to go to college, or someone who's in college, maybe a Black man who's a student at Howard. You see, what narrative did the nation, did Black people, did Black pundits give to better understand what this young man is going through?
There you go. I mean, he said a lot right there, but that's real, is the fact that I think there are a lot of Black men who are having these conversations and who need that help, and who are, you know, going through those levels of traumas and feeling those inadequacies based on kind of the construct that's around us, right? And how it's kind of like playing this game where we're trying to figure out like, oh, am I good enough? Do I have what it takes? And then at the same time, already having those affirmations within ourselves, right? So we deal with a lot, I think, when it comes to, the growth and the expression part of kind of wanting to be successful and wanting to be someone in this world, but without having to deal with, the necessary racist BS that most Black men have to do on their climb towards the top. And it's very unfortunate because we deal with a lot on a really daily basis,
Besides the narrative of his film. See, all of these things work in conjunction to negate the humanity and existence of Black men and boys. So when we don't recognize child sexual and child physical abuse in our communities, it's not us having this kind of battle of recognition as many pundits are trying to make it. It's about how the suffering that no one recognizes is allowed to continue because we won't preserve the safety and humanity of a Black man or a Black boy.
There it is. I mean, I'm not trying to be up here talking, oh, they don't care about Black men and Black boys, but they don't. It's very obvious. It's probably why I'm very passionate about this channel, and what I want to do with this channel is, just to help young Black boys and young Black men like myself to be able to grow and understand one another, and to be able to look at the construct of what we're up against and be able to gain some strength to fight against this. Because at the end of the day, there's a big problem and a big disconnect between what we need and what they're giving us. And I really feel like this is something that I'm very passionate about, is the growth and the expansion the ambition, you know what I'm saying, of Black men, and where we're going and where we're headed, and where we should be focusing ourselves on and trying to get to. And I hope that, as we start to have more of these conversations about not only just the white power structure, but how it has affected us as Black men, and the action plan that maybe we can come up with to do something about this is the type of stuff that I want to talk about on this channel, because it is necessary right now, especially with kind of what we see going on in the world, what we see, influencing us in the Black community. I don't think it's any more on time than what my brother is talking about here. So let's continue.
Right, like imagine if someone was able to beat you every day, that you had, say, your mother or caretakers, your mother's friends, able to have sex with you at 9, 10, 11, 12 years old, because that's the age group of these young men.
All right. So now he gets into some more real stuff, which we're talking about sexual abuse. The sexual abuse of Black boys is so underratedly not talked about, because Black boys and Black men don't have feelings. And that's something that goes back to the beginning of slavery in Black history. All right. It's the fact that Black men are never given a human aspect. We're not looked at as humans. We're looked at as subhumans. We're looked at as objects. We're looked at as sexual objects. Right. So a lot of times, a lot of Black boys are getting taken advantage of by older women, older men, people in the system. Okay. A lot of these boys who are in these foster care, and a lot of these boys who are in homes are being totally trafficked, used, abused, and thrown away. And no one talks about it because that's something that they don't care about. They do not care about Black boys. And so, of course, the sexual abuse and the sexual deviance will take advantage of, at any point, those who they think no one cares about. So yes, we see a lot of that happening in the black community that people don't talk about. They think it's cute. They think it's funny. Oh, they got him a little young thing and da 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 da. But then don't understanding that like the trauma that this young boy has to deal with and the over sexualization that he's also going to develop because of what people have done to him, right? It's insane. Like, it's insane that nobody talks about this, but this is kind of just what happens when you're dealing with racism. When you're dealing with racism, this is what happens. Nobody cares about the young boys. They don't care about them and their well-being, right? So let's continue.
They're now telling us about this in their 30s and 40s. You see, when and that's what I mean. There's a certain humbleness that comes from talking to victims. That's not interested in battles of recognition. That's interested in how did we miss the humanity of this group of people? How did this young boy not be treated as a child? Why did we not show him care? Does the society hate him? Does the people in his community hate him so much that no one said it's not right to do this to him? It's not right to beat him. It's not right to rape him. We have one story of a young man whose mother's friend used to pay him to have oral sex with her, right? Who intervenes and says that's wrong?
And as you see, just disgusting behavior, man. Disgusting behavior. Nobody cares. This is what they do. They treat black boys like object. They treat them like they're not human. And this is what, like I said, this is what happens. It happens all the time. And so nobody talks about it because, of course, like nobody cares. But at the same time, I think it's important to raise this awareness as, our channel and what we're trying to do here, because the goal is to be able to create a platform where if we see something, we can say something and we can raise awareness for those who can identify, right? And to share their stories, right? And like he said, like these guys are coming back after being, molested when they're 16 and they're speaking in their 30s and 40s about what happened to them and the things that they went through. So I think it's important that, we continue these conversations so that the brothers can express themselves and to say, hey, I was sexually abused and this is a problem and I do not want this to continue to happen. You know what I'm saying?
Right. As a society, we'll sit back and look at something like an R. Kelly and talk about the danger he has, right? The danger he poses to black women in his community. And him and his brother were victimized, I believe, by their cousin or sister for almost a decade, right? Made to do sexual things. Not a single person intervenes and says, well, what happened to that humanity that was lost?
Bam. I mean, it'll get no realer than that. It's just basically like he said, like R. Kelly expressed during, interviews that he was sexually abused by his older sister or one of his cousins, something to that effect, and it really wasn't a great experience for him, and it turned him into the person that he became. Desensitized him to very sexual things that were not supposed to be happening to him, things that he was not supposed to be doing as a child. It made him into who he is today. And so it's crazy that, sometimes those things go right over people's head where it's like, oh, like, where did this happen? What happened? Da, 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 da. Well, it's like a monster isn't just, just isn't born. They're created. They take time. And once you, kind of grow into that, R. Kelly grew into what he became. He didn't just become that overnight. It took him time to get there. But once he got there, yes, we all were completely disgusted with the things that he was doing. But at the end of the day, it had to start somewhere, right? And that's, at least the origins from his perspective, right? So let's continue.
You see, this is the danger. The danger is to say, well, look, the nature of black men is sexually deviant, so we don't have to worry about what caused it. That's just how they are. So if his older sister or his older cousin wants to use him as a sexual plaything, him and his brother, that doesn't cause him harm because that's who he is.
That's a terrible perspective, but it is exactly what goes on in our community. Is the fact that there is such a stigma about black men and, you know, the sexuality of black men, right? There's such a stigma out there, right? That so many people, you know, just pedal off. But in reality, it's totally disgusting, and it shouldn't be a part of our culture. It shouldn't be a part of our culture. Like, it's something that I think is really disgusting, and I just hate the fact that, you know, even young boys are being sexualized because of the same you know, stereotypes. We have to deal with this every single day, because there's guys who maybe don't live up to those stereotypes, right? What do they do? What are the chances that they have to meet a great woman when they're up against, you know, these stereotypes that some people just can't live up to, you know, unfortunately. So it continues.
You see, the view of black boys as being hypersexual is what allows us to disregard so heavily their humanity. And when we see these black boys who end up in bad relationships, who are depressed, who are disengaged, right, who are triggered, right, by this kind of trauma they've experienced, we say, look, there's that black man. We knew he was a criminal.
Yeah, I think that's a great point to finish some thoughts on this. Well, you know, I think a lot of this YN culture that we got right now, the YN is going crazy. All this, there's origin to all these things, man. There's a root to all these things, and I think that's just what he's speaking on, is the fact that there is a root to the over sexualization, the stress, the hypertension, right? The crashing out, the anger. There's something to that, because it makes it clear there's a lot that black men deal with. There's a lot that we have to go through. There's stereotypes. There's all types of outside entities that are here to try to keep us from realizing our dreams, to keep us from reaching the top, to keep us from being the people that we were set out to be. And we live this life every single day, pushing through and keeping going. So I wanted to make this video because it was something that was very personal to me, because I've definitely dealt with so many different layers of this, and I really think it's important for everyone to be able to express themselves and to say what they've been through and how to get through it. And, you know, when I was going through my depression and when I was really down and out, I went into myself, and I took my time with myself, and I took my time with God to figure out why I was unhappy and what I was going through. And then I reached out to a therapist to also get help for that as well, to have someone to speak to and to try to, you know, work out those thoughts in my head. And so with the work, with me seeking, you know, a spiritual path, me working out, me making sure I'm staying consistent on my working out, me eating healthy, me taking care of myself mentally, physically, and spiritually, helped me grow and get out of where I was before. And I think anyone who's going through depression, anyone who's feeling like you're not enough, anyone who is feeling like, you know, the world is on your shoulders, trust me when I tell you that you will be able to conquer that and you will get through it. Just give yourself grace, take time, and make a plan. Make a plan. I know this video ain't gonna go viral. I know probably no one will ever watch this, you know, but maybe one day they will, and the message will get out there, and this will be a part of my grandiose story. But I just wanted to make this clear, and I wanted to take this time to say that, you know, Dr. Tommy Curry is doing great work, and his perspective on the racial battle fatigue that black men, you know, have to deal with in America is so real. And, you know, I hope that brother continues to do what he's doing. You know, I'm probably gonna hop back on here with another live maybe in a little bit. Yeah, elite live streams, man. It's me, Brandon B. We love you guys. Peace.